TLE6. Home economics. Processes in each of the food preservation/processing method. TLE6 HE-0f-10. Food preservation is the process of preparing food for future consumption by preventing its spoilage. Reasons in preserving food. One. To prevent spoilage. 2. To prevent wastage. 3. To retain the nutritive value, natural color, and texture of the food. 4. To maintain the sanitary quality of food. 5. To contribute to better nutrition for the family. 6. To help increase family income with the excess products that can be preserved and sold. 7. To help in the economic development of the country because the farmers are encouraged to produce more for others. 8. To make food available throughout the year which may be used for events, like town fiestas and other occasions. Processes in preserving the foods. 1. Freezing food is the art of preparing, packaging, and freezing foods at their peak of freshness. You can freeze most fresh vegetables and fruits, meats and fish, breads and cakes, and clear soups and casseroles. Freezing might be the easiest method of food preservation. The keys to freezing food are to make sure it's absolutely fresh, that you freeze it as quickly as possible, and that you keep it at a proper frozen temperature, 0 degrees. Properly packaging food in freezer paper or freezer containers prevents any deterioration in its quality. Damage occurs when your food comes in contact with the dry air of a freezer. Although freezer-damaged food won't hurt you, it does make the food taste bad. Food placed in the refrigerator doesn't spoil for some time. That's why people who have refrigerators could buy a whole week's supply of food. Meat, fish, vegetables, and fruits can be kept in the freezer for a long period of time without spoiling them. In the market, you will notice some fish are stored inside the containers with ice in it to keep them fresh. Refrigeration and freezing are probably the most popular forms of food preservation today. In refrigeration, the bacterial action on the food is slowed down, it takes a week or two to spoil. In freezing, bacterial action on the food is stopped. Bacteria are completely inactive if frozen. Almost all foods, meat, vegetables, fruits, beverages, and other foods can be preserved in refrigerator and freezer. Taste and texture of foods has no effect in refrigeration, while in freezing, it has minimal effects on vegetables and fruits, and no effect on the taste of meat. Due to the minimal effects of refrigeration in foods, it has been accounted as popular form of preservation. 2. Bottling and canning are process or preserving food by heating and then sealing it in an airtight container. The food is boiled to kill microorganisms and then sealed to prevent other microorganisms from getting in. It is the most popular method of food preservation. Canning has been around for many years since 1825. People can store foods in can for a very long time. The food in the can must be boiled to kill the bacteria, and the can must be sealed, can be either before or while the food is boiling. The food in the can does not spoil because it is completely sterile. Once you open the can, you have to refrigerate its contents because bacteria will begin destroying the food. Generally, cans are considered as being metal, but any sealable container, glass jar, plastic pouch, or foil, can serve as a can. For example, milk in a box on the shelf is considered as canned milk. Canned milk is made sterile by using ultra-high temperature pasteurization, so even at room temperature it does not spoil. Refrigeration and freezing are preferred to canning. Why? Because in canning you have to boil the food, which can alter its taste and texture, and its nutritional content. (3) Pickling is the method of saturating food into a solution comprising of salt, alcohol, or acid. Food in vinegar or other acids makes it difficult for microorganisms to live. It can be done with most food, like fruits, vegetables, legumes, eggs, meats, and seafood. Commonly, pickled foods include onions, soya beans, chilies. Most methods don't need a special equipment. However, pickled food can be unsafe if not prepared carefully or placed at a room temperature. Pickling is frequently combined with other food preservation methods, like freezing, fermenting, or canning. Pickling in the past was widely used to preserve meat, fruits, and vegetables. Today, it is used to make pickles such as pickled cucumbers. Preservative qualities of vinegar and salt are combined to produce pickles. Salt and vinegar inhibits the growth of bacteria. (4) Drying or dehydrating. It is a process of exposing food to a certain temperature enough to remove moisture but will not cook it. A lot of food is preserved by drying under the sun. Drying removes most water from food. Most bacteria die or become inactive when the food is dried. It can be done with most food, including vegetables, fruits, grains, legumes, seafood, meats, and nuts. It may be the oldest method for food preservation. Drying preserves some foods. Dried fish and meat are preserved foods. Legumes are preserved by drying, too. Mangoes, garbanzos, beans, are examples of dried seeds. They can be kept for a long time. Raisins are dried grapes. Dehydration. To preserve some foods you have to dehydrate them. Dried fruits, potatoes in a box, dried vegetables, powdered milk, pasta, powdered soups, powdered sauces, and powdered meat you see in the grocery store are dehydrated products. When foods are dried, bacteria will become inactive. So, foods in airtight containers will last for a long time. (5) Salting is an age-old way of preserving food. The salt draws out moisture and prevents microorganisms from growing. In this process, foods such as fresh fish are gutted, washed, and coarse salt is rubbed into it. Salting is a subclassification of the drying technique. The fundamental distinction here is that salt is added to items, for the most part, meat and fish, to draw out dampness. This brings down the microbe substance and makes food versatile for later use. Salting is the preservation of food with dry edible salt. It is related to pickling in general and more specifically to brining, preparing food with brine, that is, salty water, and is one form of curing. It is one of the oldest methods of preserving food. 1 and 2 historically significant salt-cured foods are salted fish, usually dried, and salted cod or salted herring, and salt-cured meat, such as bacon. Vegetables such as runner beans and cabbage are also often preserved in this manner. Salting is used because most bacteria, fungi, and other potentially pathogenic organisms cannot survive in a highly salty environment, due to the hypertonic nature of salt. Any living cell in such an environment will become dehydrated through osmosis and die or become temporarily inactivated. It was discovered in the 19th century that salt mixed with nitrates, saltpeter, would color meats red, rather than gray, and consumers at that time then strongly preferred the red-colored meat. The food hence preserved stays healthy and fresh for days, avoiding bacterial decay. Salting, especially of meat, is an ancient preservation technique. The meat covered by salt does not spoil because bacteria cannot thrive in salty environment. Moisture in food is also drawn out by salt. When meat is salted in cold weather, it will last for years. 6. Smoking is the process of drying food with smoke for a long period of time. This method is mainly used for fish, meat, and fruit such as banana. The drying effects of smoke and the chemicals produced from the smoke help to preserve the food. Heat and smoke mix an exquisite flavor into fish, meat, ham, and poultry. It can obstruct the growth of microorganisms that causes food spoilage. Smoking is a very efficient way of food preservation. However, proper care must be done to prevent contamination and food-related illness. Smoking, as a method of food preservation, is most likely as old as cooking with fire. Other methods of food preservation. 1. Root cellaring. As the saying goes, everything old is new once more, and that unquestionably applies to the old method of root cellaring. In its most essential frame, a root cellar is a dark, cool, generally damp territory intended to support stockpiling conditions suited to root crops. Today, it can be as complex as a custom-built cold room, a detailed root basement with proper ventilation, a kind of storage room with an electronic cooling system, or basically an area with shelving. Root cellaring has been vitally important in various eras and places for winter food supply. Although present-day food distribution systems and refrigeration have rendered root cellars unnecessary for many people, they remain important for many people who value self-sufficiency, whether by economic necessity or by choice and for personal satisfaction. Thus they are popular among diverse audiences, including gardeners, organic farmers, DIY fans, homesteaders, preppers, subsistence farmers, and enthusiasts of local food, slow food, heirloom plants, and traditional culture. Two. Sealing is a procedure of covering food to keep air out, which interrupts, but doesn't stop, the action of bad microorganisms. Sealing serves as a complementary procedure to different food preservation methods, like freezing or drying. Both vacuum sealing and fat sealing methods are somewhat easy. Vacuum sealing device is a moderately inexpensive small appliance. (3) Fermentation. With the intriguing art of fermentation, you can take control of food spoilage. Meaning, the process with fermenting will still get spoiled, ripen, or age, but they'll do as such with good, even helpful organisms instead of the bad ones. Fermented food preservation is made through allowing one kind of microorganism to interact on the food essence so it can transform some of its elements into acids or alcohols. Yeasts are used to ferment alcohol, while the lactic acid bacteria are commonly used to most foods. This family of preserved foods comprises some of the world's most amazing culinary treasures, like bread, pickles, cheese, sauerkraut, coffee, beer, chocolate, wine, and a mass of cured meat, to name some examples. 4. Jellying or jamming is the process of preserving food through cooking it in sugar until it thickens into a gel form consistency. Fruits are generally preserved as jam or jelly, fruit preserves or marmalade. Finding practical applications of concepts and skills in daily living. What are the tools you can find in your home that can be used to preserve food? Making generalizations and abstractions about the lesson. What are the different ways to preserve food and what are the processes involved in doing it? Additional activities for application or remediation. Research more information about the method on food preservation. Bring pictures of food items.